Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
Any worthwhile salesperson loves to win the deal. In many cases, that is their major motivation. However, they are also greatly motivated by getting paid for the work and effort it took to get that deal closed. But commission structures, territories, and base pay are all considerations regarding how much we see in our paycheck. Sales managers and sales professionals should all pay close attention as Scott and I discuss sales compensation plans and other great ideas on episode 503 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
Thanks, Bill. This is always a touchy subject when you start getting into compensation. This is the livelihood of salespeople. And I think as a kind of an overview, when leadership, management of a sales team, sales professionals starts taking compensation into consideration, I think there's one rule that you have to follow. You can't change it in the middle of the year. You can't change it when, the salespeople are making too much money. We need to change their compensation program.
Yeah, let's make sure we touch on that. Yeah, because you and I have seen the bugaboo of the best salesperson getting fired or getting their territory cut in half because they made too much money.
And another thing is that smart people making dumb decisions when it comes to doing that. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, we're going to talk about the book. I'm loving this book, The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Man, it is a compendium of great ideas.
Compendium. I don't know how to spell that one, and I don't think I'd be able to figure it out if I did see it in writing. But it's a great word. But it's a fabulous book. There's just so many foundational principles that Jack is really talking about in this book, and he's printed I don't know how many millions of copies of it, but it's been 10 years old, and it's still worth picking up. So today we're going to talk about principles 11 through 15, and number 11 is see what you want, get what you see. And this is into the visualization, which I agree with. I agree with visualization because I think it's a way of making your mind comfortable with reality in the future. And we have to be able to not be shocked when something good happens to us. It's because we visualize it.
Yeah, I always think that it's like a vacuum. If you can visualize things and then you pull yourself toward them with your work habits and the goals that you set and the things that you're trying to do. Dennis Waitley talks about, he was a big visualization guy.
Yeah. And I think he's deceased. I'm pretty sure he is.
I don't know that, but yeah, could be.
He was good. I mean, Jim Rohn is another one that I think anybody wants to follow, pick up somebody to keep a track on. YouTube videos is Jim Rohn. But believe it. Some people have I'll believe it when I see it. And what comes to mind with this chapter, and this was out of a program that I saw many years ago, and I'm slipping on the name of it right now, but it's see it and believe it. So if you visualize it and you see it, and then you'll start to believe it.
Right.
But I think we need to be able to believe it before we can see it too. I've mentioned the movie from Amazon, 12 Days in Utopia. There was one of the steps that this golfer went through. One of the days that they went through was visualizing the shot. And when he visualized the shot, the golf shot, he was able to really achieve it better.
Yeah, and everybody. I've read a lot of, especially golf seems to be the one because you get to set up so long. But every golfer sees that ball going in the direction they want it to go before they hit it.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, I looked up Dennis Waitley real quick while we were talking. Yeah. He's 89, still living currently.
Good for him.
So that's great. He because he dreamed, he visualized living to 100.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. Okay. It's working for him. We got the assumption and hopefully enough evidence to support that.
There you go.
One last point on this section, this chapter, it activates the subconscious mind to solve problems. And I really like that process of thinking about something before you go to bed and dwell on it.
That's right. And he talked about in the last section, I think he talked about setting up goal books, dream books to help you visualize these things. So cut out pictures or print out pictures of the things that you want. It helps you to visualize those things. I know I'm not a real good visualizer, so it helps me to have visual tools to help me understand those things that I want and where I want to go. So, all right. Number 12 is act as if.
Yeah. Great story. He talks about a party. Come to the party who you will be in 10 years from now. And it was just fascinating to hear the stories about how people showed up and then how some of those people ended up fitting right into that role 10 years after they went to the party.
Right. I think even simpler was I think it was in the story of the bank teller who dressed as if he was the bank manager.
Yeah.
And made decisions as if he was the manager. And out of all the other tellers, he's the one who became the manager first. And I think that's important, to act as if, to dress as if, to project yourself into that future that you want to be. And again, it's a vacuum that pulls you forward. When you start to dress the right way, you start to act the right way. And this is why I'm very concerned for people who, with COVID, they're still sitting around in their jammies. They don't take a shower for 3 days.
Right.
I think they're really making a mistake thinking that all business can be done online and I don't ever have to really come to the fore. You know, people make fun of me sometimes. I'll wear a suit and tie to things and they'll say, wow, man, you're really jazzing it up. And I do it for me. I don't do it for you. I do it for me, because if I don't feel professional, then it's harder for me to be professional. So that's my point on act as if.
My Uncle Fred, he worked at home and he always wore a tie to work, and he worked from home. And this was, 10, 20 years, 30 years ago. They didn't have cameras. He wore a tie.
Watch Leave It to Beaver, or, Ward always wore a tie and June always wore a dress and and her pearls. And that's the way it was. And everybody, watch old photos of 1960s airline passengers.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Everyone was in their best clothes. It was a place to go. Now you go, it's like a cattle car. They're bringing their sheep in, and I got my dog under my seat, and I'm clipping my toenails in the seat in front of me.
Man! Wow.
People act as if they're pigs, and then they reach that potential. So, all right, number 13.
Change airlines. Bill.
Number 13 is take action. Well, yeah. Take action. That's a big one, man. I'll tell you. Let me start on this one a little bit. The note I put is thinking alone won't make it so. So he really shifts gears and says, you've got to get into action. Dreaming, goal setting, all should lead you to doing something, not just thinking something.
Yeah. The line that I took out of this chapter was, the world doesn't pay you for what you know, it pays you for what you do. And this, that is kind of a twist on, where do we get value? Do we get value on who we are or what we do? And I think sometimes when we focus so much on getting value on what we do, when we stop doing it, we don't have any value.
Right. So we don't want to get ourselves into that position where we are our job, right? Because we have other worth to our lives. But here we're talking about accomplishing things. Right. And so I think it takes it out of that realm of, personal value.
Yeah. And another point that he made in the book is the universe rewards action. No matter how you look at it, when you take action, you end up getting rewarded for it. And
I call it stirring the pot, Scott.
Right.
There's times where things aren't going well for me, and I just start making some phone calls. I just start setting up some appointments. I just start getting a networking with somebody. I call a friend and just, get off the schneid for calling. And so sometimes when I'm hesitant to make phone calls, I'll call a couple of friends and have a 5-minute conversation with them. And then I can start making other phone calls because I'm in that process a little bit. So small actions can lead to bigger actions if we start them. And we have to get, I call it inertia, right? We have to move off the inertia. We got to get the rock rolling or it can't go down the hill.
Yeah. I think this is a great prescription to a poor attitude, is when you have a poor attitude is to take action. I think about Saturday, if I were to make a list of all the things that I have to do, and then Saturday I get to the list and I got a great attitude, and I'm like, my great attitude, and I'm just gonna have a great attitude and not commit to my behavior. What's going to happen at 4:00? Well, I might have a great attitude. I might not, after I looked at all the things that I didn't get done. It's 4:00. I need to do them, versus committing to them, doing them, and then having a great attitude after that. But I think sometimes when we give a bad attitude, if we just take action, we'll be able to get right out of the rut.
Yeah, I think action, we're going to talk about fear a little bit later, and action cures fear. He doesn't use that term, but I believe it to be true. You get into action, and then all those things you've been worrying about can tend to float away, or you don't have time to think about them. So
Right.
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think this take action is true. And I have a friend who used the term good attitude bum. They read all the books, they listened to all the speakers, and then they hauled off and did nothing. And so to haul off and do nothing is not going to help you. So even if you're listening to us and you think, hey, boy, I really like Scott and Bill, they do a great job, and we get notes from that all the time. And we hope that we're getting you moving into action, because just listening to us doesn't do you any good. We talk about intentionality all the time. Take what you're learning and use it in real life. Don't just learn it.
Right. Number 14 is lean into it. But I like to quote, some of the most important things can only be learned by the process of doing them. And I really believe that. Sometimes I think, and education is a theory, experience is practice. And you'll remember more from the mistakes in practice than the wrong answers on a test. And there's just so many lessons that you have to learn from experience. I remember when I first started looking for a job, and I did not complete college. I did not finish college. And all of the ads were looking for experience. And I'm like, well, how can I get experience if I don't give a chance to get started? And some of them wanted education. And, I didn't have that either. So I felt challenged by, how do I end up getting some momentum here? And I committed to the experience, getting some experience in some areas. And then that was able to gain momentum into the future.
I've heard a lot of people that, when jobs are hard to find, there's a lot of stories of people that went out and said, I'll work for free just to show you that I know how to work. All of my kids were interns at some company, and most of them ended up with jobs at that company because companies wanted to know, can you work? Do you know how to get a job done? And so just lean into it means get started with something. I've always thought about people who have to have all the lights green in order to go downtown. Well, all the lights are never green. So you're never going to get the perfect situation. And that's what he's saying here. Don't wait for everything to be ready. Start it and then make those things ready. To put it in spiritual terms, even God can't steer a parked car. Right. So if you're parked and sitting in with the parking brake on, you can't be guided by anything, even by yourself. So start moving and then make those adjustments as you move.
It starts with getting outside of your comfort zone. You got to decide, where are you most comfortable? Then how much time do you spend there? And I think you may be surprised with the answer. Get outside of your comfort zone and take action and lean into it. And I think you're going to be really surprised with the end results.
Excellent. Well, we're running out of time on this. Let's go to number 15.
Experience the fear and take action anyway.
No, mine says feel the fear and do it anyway.
I have a feeling that's the title of a book. I think he's got some copyright issues here, some letters going, that section is the title of my book. You might want to change it.
Yeah.
And he did. So, but this is something that Bill and I talked about in previous episodes of dealing with fear.
I do a whole presentation on called developing that spark of courage.
Yeah.
Which is how to overcome fear. How do we get courage when we don't feel courageous?
And we need to be able to analyze the fear and look at the worst consequences and the best case scenario. And if we're not focused on the best case scenario or the worst case scenario, then we're going to just stay parked. And that's not going to get us anywhere.
Yeah. He used a little acronym for fear. I've always said false evidence appearing real. Yeah. He says fantasized experiences appearing real, which is good too. Yeah, fantasized experiences appearing real, meaning you've made up this crap in your mind so big that when you make that phone call, the person's going to yell at you and tell you you're stupid and why did you call here today? Which, Scott, in your 30 years of selling, have you ever gotten a really rude callback?
I believe I have, and I'm grateful for it because I felt good about it. I don't intentionally want to irritate anybody, but when that person ended up calling my sales manager, that sales manager had a bit of a smile on his face going, good job, Scott.
That's right. So yours was that you had contacted him too many times and he had never called you back. Hey man, if you don't want me to call you, call me back and tell me not to call you anymore. Have some courage. Right. The thing is so funny. We think everyone is so brave except us. We think everybody is walking around with confidence. And, you and I coach enough people to know that most people, the guy who didn't take the phone call wasn't because he's angry, because he was afraid he couldn't say no.
Right.
Because he or she doesn't know how to say no. And so people are just as afraid as you just go ahead and do what you need to do anyway. Be polite, be concerned about others, and move forward.
Yeah, well said.
So feel the fear and do it anyway, or experience your fear and take action anyway. Yeah, either way you want to say it.
We're going to be covering chapters, 16 through 20 on the next one?
That's right.
Okay. This segment is being brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, your guide to get in the door by Steve Kloida.
I'm Ron Lehman, and I want to tell you about one of the best sales books I've ever read. The Art of Prospecting, your guide to get in the door, gives you the tools and techniques to fill your pipeline and achieve more sales success. The author is Steve Kloida, known as the prospecting expert, and this book proves it. So if you want to learn from the master, get The Art of Prospecting, your guide to get in the door. It's available at theprospectingexpert.com. Just click on the Buy Book button.
Okay, we want to take the last half of our podcast here to talk about sales compensation plans. You got to think, what's the best way to pay salespeople? What's going to motivate them to get the most sales in a consistent long-term manner? And so thinking through how we structure a compensation plan, how it affects a sales team, this is all crucial to the success of the organization. If we're a salesperson, we better understand the plan that we're working under so that we can make the most out of it. Now, most of the salespeople I know, man, they know how to, like, you have a contest. Ooh, you better be worried because everything's going to go toward that contest, man. If you don't, you better plan it out well. So all of these things better be part of our decision-making when we're going to take on a new position. How am I going to get paid? And so thinking about these plans is a way to go through that. As I did some research on this, people talked about 9 different styles and 8 and 10 different styles of plans. I narrowed that down to 4 because most of their plans were different territories and compensation styles within these 4 plans. So we're going to talk about 4 plans and then talk about the advantages and drawbacks, let you see what you think about them. So the first one is straight salary. And that's salespeople are paid a salary no matter what the sales level. Sometimes there's overall bonuses that the sales team gets, but individual efforts are not rewarded uniquely. So Scott, what do you see as some of the advantages to this?
Well, I think some salespeople might like security, obviously, and that can be good and bad. I'm just having a tough time with this because I don't like straight salary because I think you're just enabling inaction. You're enabling it. And
I was in retail, and I remember when Best Buy went to straight salary, and their big thing, and I was always a commission salesperson in retail. They went to straight salary, and they said it was because they felt that the salespeople were hassling the customers to try and get the sale, and they just wanted somebody who was just going to give them service. So what they really moved with was from a salesperson to a customer service, an answer person.
And that's a training opportunity. That's not changing compensation or motivation, but that's a training opportunity. The salespeople weren't trained on how to sell without making the customers feel like they were being sold.
And they didn't have a manager who was effectively saying, hey, 3 of you don't jump on the next person that comes through the door. What questions do you ask to help guide them? You can sell in a very customer service oriented manner. And as you say, that's training. But some people don't want to be that. I think that we see that at car dealerships. I've heard that before. Our salespeople aren't paid on commission, so they're just going to help you. So I don't know if that's really true or if that's just a gimmick to try and make you feel like you're not going to get sold when they're going to sell you.
Right. It's rewarding it. They're paid on some kind of relative compensation based on their results, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, and I think the assumption is that if the person might have a lower volume territory, and their territory doesn't have the potential that someone else has. So they should get paid because they're doing the same work, maybe even working harder in that territory. And so they should get paid for that. Some of the drawbacks, well, if I'm money motivated, I am not motivated by this.
Right.
So I'm not gonna go outside of myself to try extra hard to get better if I'm going to get paid the same as everybody else. So I think you slowly degrade your activity.
Ambition. I mean, you really put it under a bushel basket. I mean, it's just not there.
So that means the managers have to monitor activity, very closely, because I'm not going to be worried about end results. But then all of a sudden the manager gets pressure for the end results, and then they start kicking ass.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I mean, it's just not a model, I think, that works favorably. And if in order for it to be favorable to salespeople, you need to pay them a high salary, because any salesperson that's worth anything is going to be able to generate much more income from selling something on a commission. And when you start having a straight salary and you have a high salary, as an employer, you transfer all the risk of results onto yourself as the employer versus transferring the risk onto the salesperson as the one that's generating the revenue.
All right, let's look at the second one, salary plus commission. So you get a base salary. It's usually, something that's barely over minimum wage, but it gives you something to know you'll get every month. Advantages, it gives you some security. And then the commissions are the things you're really going for, because the base salary really isn't enough to support a family or whatever, but it's something to get you started. So.
Right. There's a difference between being hungry and starving. And you don't want a salesperson that's starving. You want a salesperson that's hungry. And this is a good plan of salary plus commission to keep them motivated so that they're hungry but not starving.
Right. And the drawback, some people can become content with the base, or they get the base and they get, they're sitting in their office waiting for the phone to ring, because we do have some lead generation going on, and they're not really hungry enough to go out there and create what they need to create. So what that base pay is, you need to be careful. And like all good managers, and something we recommend all the time, monitor activity. Don't assume that your salesperson is hungry.
Right.
All right. Number 3 is commission only. And this is where the salesperson gets paid only for the sales he or she makes. And they usually don't get paid till the check is cleared. When the client pays, not when the contract's written, not when everybody agrees, but when the check comes in and clears the bank, then it's added to your commission level.
I'm very familiar with this. This is a real estate agent. This is a realtor. This is where I started my sales career. And you don't get paid until the check clears and another check clears, and then you get paid. And you've encountered a lot of expenses along that way. But that check is very sizable. And when you have enough of those in the pipeline and you're getting them every 2 or 3 weeks, it's very desirable.
Right. And so you said enough in the pipeline. And I do think that this kind of pay process lends itself to a sales that happens on a pretty regular basis, right? Maybe I'm selling equipment into organizations, and that happens on a regular, or I'm selling OEM parts, and that happens on a regular basis. Once I've got a few customers lined up, those things are going all the time. I think people are encouraged to develop their territory to its full potential when they have that kind of a process. So I think it can be good, but it can be feast or famine. And I think salespeople need to understand how to hold a little bit of money. I just got my big paycheck and I spent it all on a boat. Well, now you're going to be in trouble month 2 or 3, because that doesn't happen every month. So be careful about that.
I think another challenge or drawback in this area is that sometimes these type of salespeople are so motivated to make a sale that it doesn't really matter the reputation that they're creating for the company. And
I think that's always a problem with commission is do we have somebody that's so eager for commission
driven
that they change the ethics of it.
Yeah. And then that's when we start getting state regulations and different organizations. The National Association of Realtors has a code of ethics that they have to enforce for agents to live up to a certain level of performance that's ethical. It's one of the drawbacks.
Okay. 4th one is draw against commission. So at the beginning of each pay period, you're given a draw or an advance against the commissions that you're going to make during that pay period. Sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes it's 6 months. But whatever that period is, you reconcile the account at the end of that period, see if they're ahead or behind. If the commission amount is lower than the draw, then the salesperson's now in arrears for the next pay period. So they're getting behind her, and that's one of the challenges, right? If the commission is higher and the arrears are cleared from the past, the salesperson receives the extra commission. So it really depends on what that pay period looks like, how much that draw is. but the salesperson knows that they're going to have that draw against commission. Sometimes there's a base salary in there as well. So they might do a base salary plus a draw against commission. That's kind of a modified look. And I think that's the one that we tend to like. But I am concerned that salespeople get farther and farther behind on this, and then you lose them.
Right.
And sometimes sales just don't happen. You've got to really look at what they got in the pipeline.
Right. Like you said, you got to monitor the performance. You got to coach the sales rep, and you got to have all those opportunities to, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. There's a lot of things that have to go into this role. And I like this. There's different stages of it. And if you want to learn more about how to deal with a recoverable draw or an unrecoverable draw, then reach out to Bill and I would be happy to tell you more about how this works.
Yeah, I just think this one you have to worry about. As Scott said, you really have to monitor. And I think salespeople can really feel like you're taking their money away from them when they finally do hit a commission level, or they do get some commission and it's all going to go against that draw that they had. Then they can be demotivated by it. So be careful of that. Now, I wanted to consider a couple of other things before we go off this topic and close up. There's different types of commissions too. So I might get a commission just on sales or volume, I call it. So the salesperson gets 5% of whatever and all sales that come into their territories. What do you think about doing it that way?
I think that's the easiest. I think that is also the most controllable by the salesperson. I don't think that the salespeople are in a position to be able to influence the management and the expenses of a business.
Right.
And I think that it's easier to just take it right off the top. And again, you still have to coach the salesperson on what they're selling, because there are products that have a higher gross margin than others. So you need to be able to. I think
also you have to be careful that salespeople, in order to get the sale, don't drop your price so much.
Right.
That I don't care what the deal is. If I take 10% off the top, I'll still get paid and I'll get 90%. But the organization just lost 10% in profit. Exactly. Every dollar you take off is only profit.
Correct.
We don't drop the quality of our delivery because you've dropped the price of the sale.
Right.
So be careful about that.
Yeah, very true.
Second one is to be paid on profit margin. So the salesperson gets a higher percentage of profits. Those go up as profits are higher. So they might get 5% if profits are less than 30%, or 7% if profitability goes over 30%. I was paid when I was with Radio Shack, when they were making actual money before they lost their business. I would get paid, my end of the year bonus was a percentage of the percentage of profits. So if I had 10% profits, I got 10% of that. If I had 20% profitability, I got 20% of that.
Wow.
And so it escalated quickly to the point where I was able to buy a sports car with my bonus.
Wow. Yeah.
At the end of the year. And that was a substantial bonus. And that was a very rare pay process for retail, where most of my peers were just paid a straight salary.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one is
old business versus new business. So it can be in volume or it can be profit, but I'm paid differently on old business than I am on new business. When I get new business, maybe for the first 2 years, I'm paid a certain percentage of that business. Then it becomes old business. And now my profitability is usually lower on that because I'm doing less work and somebody else might be doing more work in customer service or my inside salesperson or whatever. So I think that can be good, but I really don't like it when they take the sales away from the salesperson entirely. So you get it as new business for 3 years, and then we take it all from you, because I think that's a mistake. Salespeople need to be able to build up their account, and they shouldn't have to worry every day. I got to go out and get a new commission. I got to get a new customer. I've seen this in life insurance sales. The life insurance company makes money forever, but the salesperson made it for 3 years for starting the account.
Right.
I think that's really awful.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the same level, but I think you should get something for the work you did in the past.
And this gets down into the role that the salesperson has, or if a blended role with account manager. And when you get account manager, that's managing old business. When you're sales rep, you're bringing in new business. And when you heavily compensate new business, hopefully the salesperson is drawn to that. I think you can make a compensation plan where You need to be able to generate 60 to 70% of your monthly revenue. It has to come from new business that's generated within the last 12 months. And that's part of the commission schedule. And when you add incentives and bonuses onto this, if you go, okay, we're going to give you a bonus if you reach your goal and over 60% of your revenue is new business, we're going to give you a goal. And then I like an incentive plan where if you do 3 months, where you hit your goal 3 months, you get a huge incentive for hitting that in a 3-month period. It's not a quarterly, it's a consecutive 3-month period with no carryover. And you end up hitting, 12 months where you reach your goal, you get that incentive 4 times, and you can add a lot of revenue to that. In some cases, it could be 20% of your revenue.
Right. I think that's a great way to look at that. Is to make sure you're monitoring, I'm still getting paid for old business, but what's the percentage? I can't live on that old business because now I'm not a salesperson anymore. I'm a customer service person. Right. So make sure you're bringing that new business in. So those are just some of the ideas that we want you to think about when you're taking a job. Make sure you get a commission process that is going to be profitable to you and works with the type of the way that you think and the way that you want to work. If you're a sales manager, make sure that you make a commission process that you can live with, because as Scott and I opened with, don't fire your best salesman or cut their territory in half because they're making more than the owner. Right. You're the one that decided the compensation plan. Live with that compensation plan because that salesperson is doing what you told them they should do. And I get so tired of this. Well, you're doing so well, we're going to cut your territory in half. Terrible crap. I think give them their own sales assistant and make them double their work because they're not doing a bunch of useless nonsense. So quit getting jealous of the compensation plan you set up and pay that person for the work they're doing. Yeah. I think one mantra to keep in mind is you want to reward the behavior you want to instill. There you go. And look at goals, and then also look at objectives. Objectives are conditions within the goal in order to reach additional bonuses and incentives and or commissions too. Yep. Because I think when you're paying somebody a commission, you're paying them for going beyond the call of duty of what the minimum expectations are, and they're doing more than that. Yep. And again, that has to be measured and managed. Whenever I talk to people who are jealous of salespeople's pay, I say, do you want to do what they do? Well, no, I don't want to do any of that. Well, then don't be jealous. It's just not fair. That's right. It's just not fair. The reason they make that money is because they do the things that other people don't want to do. Right. All right, let's go into your golden nugget and wrap this up for today. Golden nugget today is failure will never overtake me if my determination to succeed is strong enough. By Og Mandino. Yeah. Some of you recognize that name and some of you don't. The greatest salesman in the world. One of the greatest books ever written. Absolutely. Really encourage you to go out and get it. And anybody who's read that recognizes this failure will never. The word overtake me struck me on this time. It's almost like we're running this race and failure is nipping at our heels if we're not willing to get into action, as we talked about in that first section. Get into action or failure will overtake you. Right. It's not just determination. It's that determination leads to action. And sometimes I'm reading during this Lenten season different topics, and one of the topics that came up was yielding. When I'm yielding to other things that are outside of the path, the distractions overtake me. And if I just focus on the path, then I won't give energy to things that won't support my goal. Great point. All right. So all the information is going to be at winningatselling.com. Go there for the show notes. Anything that you want to pick up, contact Scott and I through that. We welcome your feedback, welcome your comments, any questions you have about compensation. If you got a book that you'd like to recommend, we'd really like to hear from you there. The topics that we're going to be covering next week is the difference between sales and marketing. Some people think they're the same, and most people think that they're different. And we're going to talk about what's in common and what makes them different. And we're going to be covering chapters 16 through 20 on the success principles. Go out and get better one skill at a time. Joyful selling.